We continue on with our draft storylines. We're just almost less than a week away from the NFL draft. On today's episode, we worry and focus on the Los Angeles Chargers, the Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. Y'all know I'm gonna talk about it and break it down right after this.
Welcome to your number one spot for all NFL news and content, NFL Central.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back into another episode of NFL Central, your number one spot for everything NFL. I'm your host here, Bobby. So if you're tuned in with me today, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. Man. I'm super excited about the NFL draft that's going to be happening next week. I know you all are as well. So we're going to keep this content coming. Today, we focus on picks 23, 24, 22, 23, and 24, kicking it off with the Los Angeles Chargers, who last season finished second in the AFC West with 11-6 record in Jim Harbaugh's first season with the team. Now, the question is, will this draft help the Los Angeles Lakers get closer to winning the AFC West? You already got to consider the coaches that are in the AFC West. They're all good. They are all good. You're talking about Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers, Andy Reid. You're talking about Pete Carroll and Sean Payton, all teams with really, really good head coaches. Some teams with a little bit more talent than others, but a very, very tough division for all these teams. There are expected drop-offs for teams like the Chiefs and whatnot. And there's expectations for the Chargers to rise up and see what they can do after a successful season last year. So will the Chargers be able to get closer to winning the AFC West just by drafting some prospects in this draft? I say it's a possibility. I could say that sometimes you go out there and you just add a few pieces here and there and you make some changes to your team that can propel you to new heights. For the Los Angeles Chargers, I think, me personally, they need more help at the wide receiver spot because Quentin Johnston just hasn't lived up to the expectations that was placed on him as he inserted himself in the NFL. In the defense, they have departures like a Joey Bosa who went on to another team. And I think that was ultimately a great move for the Los Angeles Chargers. Say, hey, we coughing up all this money, but we ain't seeing necessarily the production that the money requires. So you got to get up out of here. But if we're looking at the draft, if we're looking at the people that they picked up this offseason, some of the notable names is Najee Harris, and they brought back Mike Williams, and there was some speculation or some talk that Keenan Allen might have been considered in there. I didn't necessarily think that was going to be a possibility, but it was definitely placed out there for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, one player who's being mocked to fall to the Chargers, who really makes a lot of sense to me, is wide receiver Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I know I probably didn't say his name in the best way, but you know who I'm talking about, so don't talk smack in the chat. It's okay. But last year, Egbuka had for Ohio State had 81 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And be quite frankly with you, just watching his tape, you pretty much can see the talent just jumping off the screen from this young player. He has really, really good hands. He's a really good route runner, and he could definitely pick up some yards after the catch. Does he fit well with the Los Angeles Chargers? I say absolutely. Emeka Egbuka will be a great addition to a Los Angeles Charger team that need more help in the wide receiver area, in the wide receiver room. They need a guy that's going to go out there and play make. You're solid on the defensive end. And picking that 22, you don't have to attack your defense right now. But I say if that young player falls to you, you have to take him, because I don't think there will be too many players at that particular spot at 22 for the Los Angeles Chargers that can go out there and be able to give the production that's necessary for a Chargers offense who needs a little bit more out of their pass catchers. I think the Najee Harris addition helps the team a lot. but I still think they need more out of the wide receiver room. You hit on one of your wide receivers this past season in Lab McConkey, who had a really outstanding season. Your tight end and Tyler Conkin, he's not that bad. I think he's a very a serviceable tight end that can go out there and do everything that you need him to do, plus a little bit more. So why not try to get you another wideout that can be dynamic and make plays for the Los Angeles Chargers? Will the draft determine if they will be able to push for the AFC West? I will say possibly. I'm not going to say their whole entire season is dependent on this draft, but it's about building and taking the necessary steps forward to ensuring that you are competing within not only this division, but the entire AFC, because it's a gauntlet over there. And that is the stronger conference when you talk about the NFL. And when you talk about the quarterbacks that's within your division, you're talking about a Geno Smith who may not be at superstar level, but is a very serviceable quarterback that can go out there and win you games. You're talking about the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes, and you're talking about a up and coming, possibly young rising star in Bo Nix, who everybody is expecting to get better. So you have to become more dynamic and be able to go toe to toe with some of these teams in the AFC. So I absolutely believe that Emeka Ibuka will be a great selection for the Los Angeles Chargers if he is available when they pick at 22. Now we move on to pick 23. That's the Green Bay Packers. Want to talk about the Green Bay Packers? Y'all see all the Chicago stuff. Y'all know I'm a hater, but this is an NFL show, so I have to speak objectively. But the question that I have for the Green Bay Packers is, how much longer can they go without a number one wide receiver? I feel like that's a fair question. How much longer can the Green Bay Packers go without a number one wide receiver? We've heard Romeo Dobbs can be the number one. Christian Watson can be the number one. Jaden Reed can be the number one. But the reality is, none of those guys are number ones. Christian Watson, I love the kid's talent. I believe he can be a hell of a playmaker, just not only because of the size, but the speed that he has. He has these, I would say, good hands, and he's a solid route runner. But it's always something with him in the hamstrings. And I believe he just tore his ACL this past season. So it's going to be hard for him to come back anytime soon and be ready to go and put on for the Green Bay Packers. I seen mocks that said that they were going to go out there and potentially draft a Shamar Stewart if he was going to fall to them. I seen mock drafts to say that Jalen Noel is the wide receiver for them. Look, I think that Jalen Noel is a solid wide receiver. Does he have number one potential? I'm not ready to bank on that. And it is not because I don't think he has the talent, but I think that if you're a number one receiver, you have to, if you are one of the shorter receivers out there, you have to be dynamic and explosive and in ways to where you can take a slant and take it 25, 30 yards and potentially hit your head on the goalpost. Or you have to be able to draw so much attention that you are helping the other guys around you, you know what I'm saying, succeed. And you definitely have to beat the one-on-one matchups. I believe his route running is solid. I believe he has solid hands, but it's just going to be too much pressure to place on a young receiver like him this early in his career. He could very well come in and perform at a high level. I'm not going to sell him short on that. But with Jalen Noel being mocked to the Green Bay Packers, I don't necessarily know if that's the best way that they should go with that particular pick. But I do think that they need to do their due diligence to see if they can eventually find a number one wide receiver that can run with Jordan Love for the foreseeable future if you want to be able to get the best out of this offense. We can't, enough is enough for the Green Bay Packers in their fan base to sit there and say, we have four number ones. No, you don't. You don't. You have a good number two wide receiver in Jaden Reed. You got a good number two, number three, and Romeo Dobbs, but you don't have the de facto number one. That is what's going to help you take a step forward and not have, up and down seasons like you have had in the last two seasons for the Green Bay Packers. So you got to look at what you can do. Now, before we move on, just to let those people know who's wondering how Jalen Noel did his last season in college. He did 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Not bad. Absolutely not bad. But let's see what else that they can do. I think it'll be a solid selection, but I'm just not too sold on the number one potential for him. And I will sit here and be wrong if he does thrive and step up to be that number one because, hey, even as a rival to the Green Bay Packers, I will sit up here and tell you these people know how to get young talent and develop them. That's one thing that they know how to do very well in Green Bay. And y'all know it hurts me to talk well about Green Bay. But again, this is NFL Central, not Chicago Bears Central. So I have to speak objectively about them because they are one of the more consistent franchises and teams in this NFL. Got to call it how we see it, whether we like it or not. But last team for today's episode we're talking about is the Minnesota Vikings that are picking at 24. My question for the Minnesota Vikings for this draft is how do you use this draft to ensure that you don't have a drop off? Because the Minnesota Vikings, they had an outstanding season last year and a season to where not a lot of people had a lot of expectations for them. And going with Sam Darnold, there was a lot of doubt early on, and they proved me wrong. They absolutely proved me wrong. The Minnesota Vikings came out there and they did themselves a really good job finishing second in the NFC North with a 14-3 record. And they made themselves a playoff team. The playoffs did not end well for the Minnesota Vikings, but they made themselves a playoff team. But now with the expectations of or with the questions or concerns for the Minnesota Vikings, my question still stands strong. Will there be a drop off now if JJ McCarthy is your quarterback? I know how he was in Michigan because I'm a Michigan fan. And I know that he can operate well within a system. But now, after seeing the Minnesota Vikings thrive and go to the playoffs with Sam Darnold, what type of pressure is going to be on JJ McCarthy moving forward into this season? So, what should be the plans for the Minnesota Vikings this season? I mean, this draft, excuse me. What do you do? Because in the offseason, you beefed up your old line. You went out there, you signed guys like Will Fries, and you went out there and got you a Ryan Kelly. Exceptional job. And they spent money on the defensive side of the ball as well. Do they go with a safety or do they go with a cornerback? Just to make sure that your team is giving as much coverage as necessary to your young quarterback and JJ McCarthy to the point there is not a major fall off. So right now we looking at certain mocks. So some mocks have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Jahdae Barron, cornerback. And hey, I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it. I think he's a hell of a player. 67 combo tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 5 interceptions. Now, I'm not necessarily mad at the mock because I think that you absolutely have to pay some attention to your defensive backfield because how well they did this offseason picking up defensive linemen and then having a strong linebacking core already. You definitely want to ensure that your defensive backfield is good. But my question is, do you go cornerback or do you go safety? Because, yes, I love Harrison back there, but Harrison is up there in age. Harrison is up there in age. So will the Minnesota Vikings look at a safety like Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame? That's one of my favorite safeties coming out of this draft. And I think Xavier Watts is a hell of a player. I believe you can place him just about anywhere that he needs to be as a safety. He can go out there and play single high. He can go out there and play two high. You could drop him in the box and he can go one-on-one with some guys and be physical. So what should their plans be heading into this draft so you can ensure that there is no drop off from last season? Obviously, every team don't win 14 games every single season. They just don't. But how do you ensure that you don't fall flat on your face to where you're at the bottom of the NFC North and not even sniffing the playoffs next season? Because they had a great, strong start to their season last year. No, it did not end well, but they had an exceptionally great start. So what do the Minnesota Vikings do? Me personally, I say you get you a young safety in there to where you can coach him up and tame him, and then make sure that when Harrison Smith goes ahead and walk off into the sunset, that young player can fill in. Or you can simply go ahead and get your young safety and then get your young cornerback and Jade Barron, and then maybe pick up a safety later in the rounds. I'm not opposed to that idea either. So y'all let me know how y'all feeling about all things discussed today, though. But that is it for me today, man. Make sure you go ahead and you leave your feedback, comments, concerns down in the box for me so we can go ahead and chop it up and talk this great football. NFL draft season is heating up. And y'all already know we going to keep coming with that fire. My man Steve-O, he getting his schedule situated. So it's going to be more coming from the both of us. But in the meantime, in between time, one of us going to be up here. One of us gonna be up here talking that stuff. So I appreciate y'all, man. Thank y'all so much for the continued support. The numbers have been great. But go ahead and make sure before you ride out, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. That's it for me, y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one for sure.